Good evening, everyone. Past presidents, Mr. Shrikant, Mr. Shankar, distinguished members of the Madras Management Association, also members of the IIM Ahmedabad Alumni Association, and some very good friends. Thank you for being here. I know that I may be standing between you and the next quarterfinal, which is due to start soon. I don't know how many of you are English supporters and how many of you are Swedish supporters. Seems nothing like the game that was there last night. The good thing is that most of the first halves have been very insipid, and therefore even if you miss 5-10 minutes, I'm sure you won't blame me for that. I go back to one of the quotes of the former US President Ronald Reagan. And he's known for his wit, more than his presidency, I think. So he said, it's a terrifying thought when somebody walks up to you and says, I'm from the government and I'm here to help you. So as Mr. Shrikant was introducing me, I thought it may be equally terrifying for you to think that I am an academic and I can help solve your business problems. Fortunately, I have other hats, and one of the other hats is that I'm also a management consultant, and that could be equally terrifying as well. But I also, if you're still not impressed, I have a third hat, which is I was a corporate manager, like many of you, for many years. So I suppose one of those three gives me a bit of license to say something about the topic today. And I also realized that maybe I should have talked to Mr. Shrikant before I wrote the book, because he knows more than what's written in the book about the topic. The topic today is, as he said, B2B sales, and I've used a title called Nuanced Account Management. Many of you are familiar with account management, which is not accounts management, but where there is a sale and purchase transaction between two institutions rather than an institution and an individual or two individuals. The term account management is very old. Professor Kotler cites that in one of his very, very early editions. Surprisingly, over the 40-50 years since then, the literature has not quite moved a lot, unlike some of the other subjects, including B2C or consumer product marketing. The B2B marketing remains a bit of an enigma. It remains under wraps. It remains as the secret of those who are successful. I'm not sure how much of those secrets I have priced open in the book, but my goal was to reflect on my experiences both as a corporate manager as well as during my teaching time, to bring out certain facets which may not be quite written in books, but which are picked up through experience, and yet can be fitted into a certain kind of theoretical framework. So today's topic I will go through in sort of three parts. Firstly, I will talk about the origins of the topic itself, the genesis of how it interested me, and I'll go through the book fairly quickly, pick up a few chapters and talk about them, maybe with some anecdotes as well. And lastly, I'm happy to take some questions and have a summary of the talk, if that is fine with you all. As Mr. Shrikant was saying, B2B can be a very large transaction, very, very large. Last year, one of the Chinese airlines announced buying of 150 Boeing aircrafts. That's sort of mind-boggling. Over a period of 5 years or 10 years, of course. But as soon as that was announced, Boeing stock went up by, 20%. So can you imagine just the signing of an MOU has that much of an impact in terms of how the market perceives the vendor company? Most of the anecdotes I've used come from some of the experiences that I've had in the B2B, in different fields actually. I've worked in the steel industry, I worked in the chemicals industry, B2B, I worked in something called flavor and fragrance industry, a very niche industry which caters to FMCG players and so on. We are indeed living in extraordinary times, very transformational times, and I'm sure this statement is not new. I borrowed it from many others who always preface their talk with this. But how it is related to what I'm saying today is, if you look at the top 10 NASDAQ market cap companies, I think about 5 or 6 out of the top 10 are non-tech or tech companies. And they didn't really exist 20 years ago. You know the names, I know the names, everybody knows these names. And then I was reading last week something about the Indian situation. Out of the top 50 Indian market cap companies, nearly 22 or 23 belong to the B2B industry. So B2B is not as glamorous as Coke or Pepsi or Heinz chocolates or any of those things, Unilever and so on, but yet half of the industry is really B2B in terms of both output, GDP, perhaps even employment, I'm not sure. There's a large number of people employed. If you consider most of the IT sector, it is largely B2B, and they employ, in the last 10 years, they probably have employed every single new engineering graduate who came out of college. So, all the more why it's surprising that B2B is not a very active topic of study in many of the institutes and the places. I taught at Singapore Management University. I've taken a short break now. And we only have one course on B2B marketing that is taught every other semester. There's about 5 times the number of people who choose consumer marketing courses as a B2B marketing course, which is surprising. At the end of the day, everybody works for a B2B marketing. So, given all that, I'm hoping that the book has enough spectrum of thoughts and ideas and experience-based insights, which will be useful for any of you or any of your colleagues in the organization. Let me go on to some of the topics, particularly. So I said there are changes in the environment. So what is changing, particularly with respect to B2B? Consolidation. Customers are consolidating. Big companies buy big companies, and all of a sudden, instead of 10 customers, you're left with 3, something like that. It is probably not yet a big factor in India, but if you look at the global scenario, there's a lot of customer consolidation. How does it affect you? If you are vendor to supplier to customer A, and then customer A and B get together, what happens to your position? Will you continue to be a vendor? Will you continue to be a priority vendor? That entirely depends on what was your position with customer A and with customer B. For argument's sake, if you had a sort of top slot supplier position with customer A and nothing with customer B, you're going to be up for a lot of scrutiny when the two companies merge. Because all of a sudden there will be many suppliers competing for the merged company's business, and everybody is going to be evaluated more or less from the beginning. That can become a big challenge. It can be an advantage as well. If you have been a top supplier to A and B, you automatically qualify as a top supplier to the new company. And you can even maybe increase the business. Similarly, suppliers are consolidating, merging as well. And that has its own dynamics. The new company may have different priorities from the two entities that merged. I was part of one of those companies 15 years ago. Two equal-sized companies merged, and I was in one of them. And it was taken over by a private equity. They ran it for a few years, and they put it out in the IPO market after some time. But the key lesson for us was that every single major customer was re-evaluating us, because we were two medium-sized companies and we didn't have a lot of stake with these big clients. And all of a sudden we became bigger, we had something to tell, we had some technologies to bring, we had the global reach, and customers started to take us seriously. And that company is doing very, very well since then. It's gone up from, I think, position 7 to position 3. Part of the reason maybe because I don't work for them anymore. Then there are other things, Mr. Srikanth also referred to it, that there is a full visibility of information now. Everybody knows everything, even if there are unreliable sources sometimes, like the Wikipedia, but everybody Googles, everybody finds some data, some information to help them to get to a point where they can start talking to a supplier, even if they don't conclude business based on internet sources. One of the things we say in the B2B business is that your customer is always 2 steps ahead of you. We are still finding out customers and their needs. They've already found out your capabilities through the system. So there's a lot of information that's laid out today, which wasn't there 20 years ago for clients. Technology is sort of moving that forward and forward and forward all the time. You have now information that lands on your desk, whether you want it or not. And you can have a small team of people who go through all that information and say, if you are the CEO or one of the heads of sales, you can say, just let me know this week what was important, which I need to know. Okay, there's so much that's coming your way because of technology. There's a big talent war. It's a very big paradox in India and in some of the other parts of the world that there's more hands available to work, but there is less quality available. There is a big talent war everywhere. I don't know if you feel the same thing in your group as well. The right talent is always missing, always elusive. It's always difficult to get. It's, to some extent, the B2B account management talent is in the same position. There's a lot of surprising competitors. I'll talk about it later a bit more. The so-called disruptors. It's no more just the conventional 1, 2, 3, 4 company competition. There's always some surprising guy who comes. Hopefully I have time to give some examples at the end. Customers are becoming more demanding. How many of you don't agree? Customers want everything under the sun, most of it for free. Is that right? And most of it even before they place an order on you. But that's the real world. Today they want, their demands have gone up. It's no longer just a good price, a good quality, a good delivery schedule, good smooth business transactions. It's a lot more. Customers want you to be their advisors. Customers want you to be to evaluate options for them. We had a customer who came and said, you are one of the suppliers, but I also have supplier B and supplier C, and these are their proposals. Okay? Now, I want you to come up and compare yours versus the other two and tell us why we should choose one of the three and with good reasons. Okay? Who used to do this work before? Customer either did it himself if he was smart and if he had the abilities, or farmed it out to consultants. Okay? And so we have stolen the consultants' business and also shrunk the market because we don't get paid for it as suppliers. And many of you must be reading that B2B and B2C are all morphing a little bit. Similar concepts are heard in B2B as well. You hear of customer loyalty, customer satisfaction now. You hear of branding, sub-branding, micro-branding. All these are B2C terms, but they're all in B2B as well. For example, a customer will deal with you for a certain set of products, but not for a certain other set of products. Part of the reason is you are much more reputed and well-branded in that first set of products which they want. You are much less reputed, much less branded, much less in a leadership situation for the other set of products that they don't want. So this is all like B2C. I mean, you buy one of the Hindustan Lever products, but you don't buy all of their products. Big ideas in B2B and in account management is sell more to existing customers. This is very, very paradoxical again. Many people think I need more customers. How do I increase my sales? I need to find new customers. I need to find more customers. It's true to some extent. It's true in some industries. It's true if you are a young company, you're starting out, you still have to establish market share and market reputation. But for the more established companies, is it true? What happens if you sell more to existing customers and don't really look after the so-called new customers? And here is some mind-boggling statistic. It is 7 to 10 times more profitable to sell to an existing customer as compared to a new customer. This is in B2B. Okay, it's proved. If you read the books, some say 7, some say 8, some say 9, some say 10, but nothing below 7. How does that happen? I'm sure experienced people like Mr. Srikanth and his group know very well this fact that if you're already in the company, if you already know, if you're already taking efforts, if you already are in a marriage with a key customer, don't we all exploit our marriage and try to get the most out of it without the other person even knowing about it? Okay, now I said B2B science hasn't developed, literature hasn't developed, and here are some of the problems. The problem is that many of the sales teams, and that may include you, that may include me as well, we just stumbled into this profession. We were doing something else, and there was some opportunity to sell, or we probably didn't go through a lot of training, specific training. It looked like a good fit between what we are capable of doing and what the company wants. So we're all sort of natively, intuitively skilled salesmen. Okay. Now, does that work in today's world? Probably not as good as in the past. So the old sales tactics don't work. What is one of the old sales tactics? Talk. When I was hiring people, most of the candidates would lose out in the first 2 minutes, because if the first 2 minutes they talk more than the company, they are gone. And the ratio is typically with the customer. This is what I found out from some research, is that 1/3 of the time you talk, 2/3 you let the customer talk. Okay? We do almost entirely the reverse. we meet a customer, we think it's our best opportunity to say whatever we want to say, right? 80% of the time we corner the decibel quota. Many salespeople are reactive, and I'll talk about proactivity as one of the virtues of good account management. Too much emphasis on personal relationships. I have nothing against personal relationships. It's usually good. You need the chemistry, you need the willingness on the other side to talk to you. But is that the only thing that you deploy? Are you getting sales only because you know someone? And that's quite dangerous for the organization. When that someone leaves, your business is gone. When that someone is unhappy, your business is gone. So no single person is indispensable in either side of the aisle, either the customer side or the supplier side. Most salespeople are transactional minded. I used to be as well. Okay, I'm going to see a customer today. What can I get from him? Can I get an order? How soon? How big? What do I have to do for that? Okay, that's my transaction. Not many people go to a customer and say, okay, I'm here today to see the customer, not because I want an order. I think our relationship is not that great. I want to build it. I need to build it. I need to take it from, C plus relationship to a minimum B plus in the next 3 months or 6 months. That's my goal. Most salespeople are not like that. They will therefore avoid people who take longer time to decide. I don't know if that is your experience as well. And they'll go to customers who are ready to give you an order. Right? When I started out my career, I was working for one of the leading companies in Chennai. And I was very young. I was in the accounting side, not in the sales side. And I saw an invoice for a sales invoice for the items that they were selling. The invoice value was rupees 500. In those days, that division had a turnover of 200 crores. In those days. Okay, I think it is about 2,500 crores right now. So don't try to guess my age. It's quite a number of years ago. And then being young, I rushed out to the sales manager and I said, could you explain this to me? Then he said, what is there to explain? It's an invoice, it's 500 rupees. This is the item we sold. I said, no, I'm not talking about that. I said, okay, let me ask you another question. What's the highest market share you enjoy in any segment? And he mentioned a particular segment, segment A, and he said, we have 37% market share. I said, okay, can you explain that, if not the invoice? He said, oh, that's very simple. We are the market leaders in that type of products. We are clearly the undisputed kings. I said, okay. So our conversation didn't end there, as you would have imagined. So just park this conversation in your mind for the time being. I'll come back to you and let you know what eventually followed after the conversation. We have other problems as well. We have a reward system which is ancient. How many of your companies have sales incentives? Sell more, your salespeople get more. Right? You get more as a manager, you get more, and your sales people get more as well. You sell, let's say, 2 million instead of 1.5 last year, you got more. You got 33% more sales, and you should get more money. So that's the system that drives today's sales. And we'll talk about why today's sales is not the end all of everything in B2B. We have a problem with information. We don't like to share. Typical sales, account managers like to hoard information. I know it, and it's better that I don't tell you if you're talking to a customer. Remember I said earlier, customers already know it. And you're only likely to add a little bit to it. You're likely to reconfirm what they know. You're likely to maybe bring in a slightly different angle to it, insight to it. But you're not quite withholding a lot. But a lot of typical salesmen think they are withholding. Withholding is power. And also status quo. If your customer sales is every year growing 5% for the last 5 years, how many of you are going to be happy about it? Every year is 5% up, 6% sometimes, 7% up. It's all coasting nicely. You think everything is good. You even start seeing your customers less and less and try to make do with some phone calls or a few emails. Okay? Status quo is the most dangerous situation for a B2B transaction. Why? You will never realize when the customer is slipping away. Maybe there's some new competition, maybe there's a disruptor who's meeting the customer every day. You haven't even met the customer for 3-4 months. Your ground could be slipping and you don't know about it. Okay? Does the customer call you and tell you, hey, by the way, next year, I don't think I'm going to buy so much from you. Do they tell you? They probably don't tell you. They just quietly walk away. And you see the orders are not as good as the last year, and then you go and rush and find out, and you find out that there's lots of things have happened. So status quo is never good in B2B. Please don't convince your managers and say, my sales is growing from this to this to this, just leave me alone. Your managers are not going to leave you alone. Lastly, maybe there is, some of these points put together, there's a lack of holistic approach. How do you see a customer? You see a customer only for transactions. You could see a customer for their future strategies, future business. You see a customer as a sensible partner for you. You see a customer as a long-term, reliable, mutually beneficial partner. So how do you see the customer? Is it holistic? Is it parts? A lot of salespeople are not trained to see the customer holistically. And therefore, I've seen in situations where salespeople go and talk to the customer about one or two topics. And as I gained some experience in account management towards the later days, I would go to a customer with like 20 topics to talk. Some are sales related, some are information related, some are new technology related, some are market information related, some could be economics, some could be the dynamics of a particular geography. We used to have 10 to 20 different things to talk. That's the holistic approach we used to take. So given all this, you have the challenges on the one side, many of them externally driven, externally forced on us. Then we have internal issues, internal problems. We have a traditional sales group, we have a lack of holistic approach, we have too many people are in the comfort zone earning decent amount of money with the incentives which is based on today's sales and yesterday's sales. So we have these two problems. So how do we go beyond this? And your customers are not going to be forgiving. As I said, sometimes they'll just drop away. That's the part that I'll take you through in the next few minutes. One of the questions I always have, including for myself, is could you potentially get 100% of your customers' business? And most people will tell me no, that's not possible. Why? Customers don't like dependency on one supplier. They don't like all their eggs being in one basket, which is all perfectly true. But in the real world, if you see, there are a number of customer and vendor relationships which are almost 100%. Is it right?
Sometimes,
yeah. Sometimes you get 70%, 80%, 90% of your client's business. 100 is just is sort of a goal which you may or may not reach, but it's not that 100 is not achievable, or near about 100 is not achievable. Okay, in the best of times, when I was working in the perfume industry, we had a customer. I think we had 95% of their business at one stage. Very large customer, not a small customer. Very large. They had probably 20, 25 brands. We were into every single brand of theirs. Okay. Of course, competition is not going to keep quiet, and they caught up, and this 95 is no more 95. But you can get to that position. That's really the point that I'm trying to make. I think enough of sales talk about the book. So I hope the content will make you enthusiastic about the book as well. Very interesting quote from Jack Welch, who used to think, who used to actually say that if their businesses were not in the top 3 in any of the industries, they wouldn't really be in that business. That was the mantra with which he drove his businesses. Of course, he retired 17 years ago, and since then, GE is not really the same company. So over a period of time, this is also true in B2B, that you don't really have a lot of serious competitive advantages. You have it for some time. You have a product advantage, you have a technology advantage, you may have a service advantage, you may have a combined advantage, but they all last for some time. They all go away at some point in time. Somebody comes equally smart, some other company, you have at least one perfect competitor, at least one. In many cases, maybe 2 or 3 or 4. And therefore, what becomes a competitive advantage? Your learning of the customer's business, his industry, his fortunes, his cost and price structure, his dynamics. If one of your customers' profit nosedived last year to this year, do you know why? If you are an account manager, you need to know. If your account team needs to know. Why did your customer suffer? Because it will impact you at some point in time. How did they make so much profits last year, and why did they not make enough this year? You need to know. So your learning, your perfect understanding of how your customer's business works, that's really the competitive advantage, and that's what Jack Welch says as well. I sort of, when I started writing the book, I was wearing the hat of account manager myself, and I said, okay, if I'm the account manager, what would I like to read? And therefore, I went in that direction, and then I had some editorial advice from the publishers. I had some advice from some of my colleagues and so on. So the book is a little more broad-based at the end. It is sort of semi-academic as well. There are no integral and differential functions in the book. So I don't know how many of the PhDs will approve it, but it's got reasonable amount of academic bent as well, because I've tried to cite a lot of previously published literature as well. The book is itself broadly into six cocoons, as I would like to call it, but not 6 chapters, which talk about the tactics sales employ. That's 1. Skill sets of salespeople. That's 2. Strategies for deeper customer engagement, customer relationship management, and innovation bias. And last, I put it last, but it's not the smallest of the priorities. It's the organizational issues in account management. I'll try and cover that a little bit. So those are the big buckets of this. Maybe just to imagine in a visual sense what this relationship between customer and a supplier is. Typically, I put them at the 2 ends of the spectrum, which is how you start the relationship. And when you start, you are a bit tentative. you're not very sure, you're maybe transactional in your mindset, you think adversarial with the customer, you think the customer is out to chew you up or take advantage of you because you're a new supplier. And the customer also sees you as that. Customer also sees you a little bit adversarial. Why is he coming to see me? Because I have big business, so he wants a share of the pie. I also will be transaction minded. Why not? If he's a good supplier, I'll ask him for 10% lower than my other best supplier, and if he gives it, I'll give him some business. So everybody is sort of transaction minded at this level. This is where you start. But unfortunately, if you stay here, there is no long-term relationship, long-term enduring relationship. That's the core of the book as well. So you need some new account management principles. You need the account manager himself to be a new person, to have a different set of glasses to wear, to look through things differently, to maybe unlearn a lot of things, and go on to some new learning. At what age does it become difficult to learn? I'm told at no age. So people learn many things when they are 70. People learn to use Facebook and Google and all the Apple features when they are 79. My mother-in-law is an example. So you can learn. You can unlearn. You can learn. You can relearn. I'm sure this is familiar to all of you, right? Even the football fans. I put it here because of several reasons. Because couple they've embodied sort of all-round skills, and that's not the only thing. He was inspiring, even as a young captain. He was inspiring. It's not just that he was a good batsman or a good bowler and a very fierce fielder. He was focused on the goals, on the outcome. He could carry the team with him. He could inspire the team. He could get top performance from some ordinary players he had in the team. That's really the way that account managers and particularly account leaders need to think. Everybody working for you is not going to be the brightest salesperson or an account manager. How do you still get the best out of them as a team? That's really the imagery that I wanted to capture with showing you a couple there. I probably will touch upon a few of the concepts in the book. The book itself has over 50 different ideas, which are grouped into those six buckets. But I'll go over a few which I thought particularly will be relevant and important from a point of unlearning where you come from and what you know to learning something new, something different. I talked about proactivity. Salespeople are generally reactive. If you get a call from the customer, you will probably respond call. But do you go and see a customer without any calls? Do you say, okay, next month I need to see all my 5 top customers in the first week, whether I have any business or not? You never know. You go and have a conversation. The customer is thinking, I still don't have a project. I still don't have a business to give you. I still don't have an order to talk about, but I have some initial ideas. And I'm glad that you dropped by, and I thought, I should canvas some ideas with you. So that's the level of proactive work. In B2B, sometimes sales take, 3 years, 5 years, the first sale to mature. What do you do for 3 years? You have to do something. You have to make progress. You have to advance. With every meeting, you have to have something to tell the customer new every time, and keep moving the progress further and further. And I was very impressed with this quote of Abraham Lincoln. You can read it. So he more or less says 3/4 of the time I'll spend in preparation. When you go back tomorrow or Monday, just find out how many of your sales team, salespeople, actually what percentage of time they spend on proactive, no order work. And how many of them are actually chasing current orders or solving some order issues and transactional problems and knots and those kind of things. How many of them spend 95% of their times? How much of their time do they spend on proactive work? You will have a big change if you can push your salespeople to say, I don't care, I want 50% of your time to be spent on customers who are not yet customers. We don't sell them anything. We want them to be our customers. We want their business. And it's not going to be one meeting, 2 meetings. It's going to take a long time. It's going to take many, many small and big steps. Start now. And see the reaction. Because their natural wiring of the brain is to go to a customer and talk and say, last order, this order, tomorrow's order, yesterday's order. So that's really the way they think. So this is one big example. The second is we are in the football season. So I would say the second point, which is keep the ball in play. Is that why Brazil lost yesterday? I don't know. So I'm told they had less than 50% of the ball. Although these indicators don't help. At the end of the day, you just need 2 shoots into the right area. What do I mean by keep the ball in play? When something is not happening with your current customer, no business, not much sales, it's all slow, what do? Your natural tendency is to just ignore the customer, maybe once in a while just go and say hello and tell the customer, no, I'm not ignoring you, I will come and see you. By that very statement, you are actually ignoring the customer. So what is keeping the ball in play? And here is a very good example. Qantas, the Australian airline, was running a one-stop London flight from Sydney, and it used to be via Singapore for like 40 years. Okay? So it is status quo. Everybody should have been happy. Qantas was doing well. Changi Airport in Singapore was doing well. Everybody should have been happy. One fine day, that business went. Because Qantas were tempted by Dubai, Emirates, and said, and they were told that we'll give you more incentives, please make your stop over Dubai. I'm sure it's not one fine day, it happened over a period of time. And the hands changed. From Singapore, Changi Airport, it went to Dubai. Now, what did Singapore do in the meantime? So they lost the business, right? They could have said, okay, Qantas is gone, let's find another customer. They didn't do that. They got back to the drawing board and said, why did we lose Qantas? What could we have done better? Obviously, there's some financial deals and better terms, and there may be other things as well. It's not only commercial, it's much beyond that. Maybe the type of aircraft they were flying was lending itself more to a initial longer haul and a shorter haul after that. That's the case if they go to Dubai, or it's sort of Singapore is kind of a midpoint. So whatever it is, they did the homework, and it took them 5 years to get it back. So what did they do for 5 years? They were even more determined to get the business. They worked hard. They worked on it. They went back to Qantas and said, tell me, why did you go? What is it that we can do for you? What are some things which are not attractive to you anymore going through Singapore? We'll see what we can do about it. So last year, Singapore got back the stopover status. It may be commercial, but the fact is that Singapore didn't keep quiet. So sometimes you lose a customer, you lose a big business. The tendency is to cry sour grapes and say, oh no, I was cheated, or I was shortchanged, or this other competitor is not as good as me. Walk away. No. Do you still want them as customer? Stay there. Keep the ball in play. Also, how do you talk to customers? What's the natural tendency of people to talk? Talk products, talk literature, talk facts. Oh, I have the best brake or brake lining, and it meets these kind of engineering standards, and so on and so forth. This is a professor at Stanford, very well-known marketing professor, and she did an exercise with students, a class of 90 MBA students. She called 3 of them and gave them all 3 probably different scenarios and said, now, today's lecture is going to be done by you, not by me. And the method of lecture was left open to them. So they took a few minutes preparing, they came back. The first one did a typical professorial lecture. I hope I'm not doing that to you. With concepts and theories and, what have you, and logical derivation of hypothesis and so on. The second one went up to the whiteboard or the blackboard and drew up a few things, asked for a few comments, took those comments, wrote down in their own words as the students spoke. And the third one was very different, was very creative. The third one did a story of the whole talk, of the whole subject. And I'm sure the conclusions are well known to you. So what she did, she gave a memory numbing exercise for 20 minutes, something else. Take your mind off of what happened, those 3 talks, and did some other things. Some other exercise, went out and came back, and then they were all asked to fill some responses to each of the presentations made. For the first one, for the lecture, 10% of the students got some of the concepts mentioned in the lecture, about 10%. In the second case, as the person used the whiteboard extensively, about 44% got some of the ideas, because some of the words were their own words from the participants, so they got some of the concepts. Most importantly, the storyteller was outstanding. So he got 80% recall of his story. Now, I'm not saying go and tell your customers stories, okay? But more or less that. So what you present, how you engage the customer, what is there for the customer to listen to and take away, is a very important thing. I've devoted one chapter for storytelling as an effective way of conversation between customers and suppliers. And we always used to do when I was in the perfume industry. Customers are humans. What do we all remember better? We remember visuals, we remember images, pictures. Some of us remember the words, the audios. Some of us remember the tunes, if there's a tune. Maybe slightly difficult to go and sing in front of your customer, but I think my nephew is going to do that when he grows up. And touch and feel. So the 5 senses, engage the 5 senses. We used to take up mock-ups to our clients. We used to say, okay, I don't want to tell you what perfume I'm going to try to sell you. This is the product. Smell it, feel it. Take 5 minutes over it. Put it on your skin. Put it on your whatever, and tell me what you feel about it. What is the mood you get? What does it remind you of? Does it remind you of some childhood memories? So it's all about those kind of impressions. I haven't worked in the TVS group kind of engineering companies. I'm sure some creative person will come up with the right way of storytelling for a brake or a wheel as well. But customers are drawn to that. Customers remember that better. Okay? One of the other chapters I talk about is talking benefits rather than features. You don't really need to know what is in it. Of course, some engineering products are different. Maybe some technical person wants to know what is in it. But most of us want to know, what will it do for me? How will it make my life easier? How will it make my production shop floor life easier? How will it make my use conditions simpler? That's the benefit. This is another little story which will be interesting. How many of your sales teams go and talk to customers about customers' innovation? It's not your innovation. You're doing your best to come up with new technologies, new products, new services. How about you go and ask a customer, what's your next 3-year innovation agenda or cycle? What are you planning? What are you thinking about? What areas are you going to work on? Let's say one of the car companies is your customer. What are they working on? We assume everybody is working on fuel efficiency. Do we assume or not? Maybe that's not their focus for innovation. Somebody may be working on safety. 80% of Volvo customers go back to Volvo. Only one reason. And Volvo is priced above most other cars. What's the one reason? They haven't had a single accident in 10 years, or whenever they go to change a car. So some companies have a safety agenda. Some companies have an innovation agenda which is based on costs. Some companies have fuel as one of the agenda. So find out what is the innovative agenda for the company. This company I'm mentioning now is a slightly fringe player in Indonesia. Is not one of the bigger customers, slightly smaller customers, trying to challenge the Unilever and the Procter of the world. And they said, I don't want to do products that they do, because I'll never be competitive. I can't produce a Lux lookalike. Nobody will buy it. I can name it anything I want. I can put Elizabeth Taylor on the wrapper. No, nobody's going to buy it. I want to do something different. It has to be different. It has to be something they haven't thought of. It can even be crazy. So we went up to them many years ago and we said, how about a fruit-based soap? As crazy as you can get, right? Okay? Having a melon soap for use by you, or I don't know, papaya soap, orange, strawberry on your hand, smell of strawberry. First impression. And then it started to grow and the customer said, this is a great idea, I want it. Okay? Eventually they had about 15 fruits, lychee and you name it. It's all soap. And then they've expanded to shower gels and so on. Now, how did we change the rules of the game? We were very bold. We didn't want the conventional. We didn't want to say, okay, why don't you launch a nice beauty soap which smells also like Lux, it's also as good as Lux. And no. I'm sure many of your customers are also yearning all the time for some creativity, some novelty, some innovation from you. Are you able to give it? And one related concept is, when do you change your own product? You are supplying something to a customer. Do you wait for the customer to say, I need a new product, I need a new version, I need a new technology? Or you go before all that happens and say, hey, I sold you this 2.5 years ago. I know you're very happy with it, but I can tell you that your competitors may be moving ahead, and I need to take you along to a slightly newer product or technology or service. 99% of the salesmen will not do it. Why? It brings uncertainty to his sales achievements, right? You go and tell a customer, change a product that you have sold to him. Will you tell him? You'll never tell him. About 2 years ago, we are in the managing committee of an international school. About 2 years ago, somebody sold us some high-end servers for our data management. And we had to buy, and it's all, today's world is very data-driven, servers. And then my current supplier used to come and say, how is the server working? Are you happy with it? Is it doing your job? How much capacity have you utilized? And blah, blah, blah. And, we have a new feature in the server, and, now you can monitor it. Now it'll send you alerts if your server is 93% full, or if downloads are not happening properly, and so on and so forth. Okay, this is the current supplier. The story changes. There was a new supplier who somehow wanted to get some part of our business. He said, what? You're still using servers? Why? Servers is not the new technology. Servers are obsolete. I'll show you how many other schools use cloud solutions. You don't need your own servers in-house. We said, why not? What about security? Oh, I'll show you how doubly secure your data is through our cloud solutions. Okay? You listen. I said, but I just bought it a year ago. I've spent so much money. What do I do with it? Oh, don't worry about it. Okay? So the solution from this other supplier was, I'll take, except maybe I think one critical application, 80% of your applications to cloud. This is how it works. This is how much you pay. This is how much you... I said, you still haven't answered my question. What about my old servers? It's just 1 year old. I haven't even written it off. He said, don't worry. I will take it back at 1 year depreciated pricing. Okay? So whatever I paid for the last year, minus whatever 10%, 20% depreciation it went through for a year, I'll give you that money. So what would you say if you are the customer? Take it, right? But you have a loyal supplier. What do you do with him? He comes every other day, and he gives you New Year diaries and gives you movie tickets sometimes. He looks after you very well. He's given you top-of-the-line servers, good service, and so on. So you have to think of how your product will become obsolete, not by you, but by your competitors. Who's going to make it obsolete? Is there somebody lurking? Is there a disruptor? Is there somebody who's going to give your customer a new story, a different story? And there was a book, Who Moved the Cheese? Many of you would have read it, which is basically this principle that your cheese moves all the time. You don't do anything, but it just moves. So your targets move. Your customers change. They think of something. They make your product obsolete. So would you be rather the first person to make it obsolete than leave it for your competition to do it? Of course, there are some other implications, when do you do it, how soon do it, and so on. So every industry has its own dynamics about it, how quickly technologies change, and so on. One of the unwritten rules for General Electric medical equipment business is that if you bought any of their equipment, and if they bring in a new technology or a new equipment within 18 months of that, okay, they will replace it 100%. No questions asked. Because you want the newer technology or the newer machine. If it's longer than that, okay, so you've used it. A couple of other aspects I want to talk about. Yeah, this reminds me of many years ago, we went on a vacation to Sikkim. And literally I was on top of the world because that year our sales grew 44%. On 20% in the previous 3 or 4 years. So obviously, we are riding a very high positive period of growth. And so we planned the holiday along with the school holiday vacation, and Sikkim seemed like ideal because we were on top of the world, as I said. A week before the trip was to start, and I booked the tickets, paid all the money, my boss calls me and said, "Hey, we need to talk about your performance this year." I said, "Can't we do it at a better time, because I'm just due for a holiday?" He said, no, we'll talk now. So maybe it's good. So I thought maybe it's good. So 44% increase. So what would you expect for bonus? A lot more money, right? Money wasn't that big those days, but whatever it is, 44% on anything would be better than not having the 44%. I was shocked because my boss said, "I have to tell you that your bonus this year is going to be less." I said, "Oh, what happened? The company didn't do well, or your bottom lines got hit, or what's really the situation?" "Oh, no, none of those things. Company has done well, your division has done well, your sales have grown, but I have to tell you that your future sales don't look good." So for the first time I was thinking, of course, I was involved in the setting up of these targets and so on. I said, what does it have got to do with my today's bonus? Everything. Because your business takes 2 years, 3 years, 4 years. So if you haven't created enough platform for future sales, and you've been riding on what you did 2 years ago, some lucky wave, and some brands did well, and maybe not even your effort fully. Market was buoyant. India was clocking 12% GDP. I don't know. I hope it does at some point in time. So my sales were up, but my future sales, which we used to measure as pipeline, was down quite steeply, actually, by 40 or 50%. And the two were put together, and I was told that actually the bonus is not going to be as good. I had no choice. I took it. I still went to Sikkim, but after I came back, I had a lot of work to do to restore the pipeline, to bring back future opportunities back into the pipeline. So we had a measure which was incentives were based not only on current sales, but also on pipeline activities. Different industries can have different weights for these things. So you may have 60% for current sales, 40% for future sales opportunities, as you see. We had our own metric for that. But it essentially tells you that the salesman has to be both a farmer and a hunter. You must have read a lot of books which says, salesmen come in two kinds. One is a farmer, one is a hunter. These are the characteristics they have. This is what they can do better. This is what they will not be able to do. I think that is a bit exaggerated statement. Account managers have to be both. You have to look after today's sales as well as tomorrow's sales. You have to find those new sales, and you have to look after that as well. So going back to the story of my first job, where the 500 rupee invoice was flashed to me, and after the sales manager said, "I have 37% market share in that segment," I said, "Why only 37%?" I was quite a precocious accountant, and accountants can ask a lot of easy questions. They don't need to know the answers. So I said, "Why only 37%?" He said, "Oh, no, that's already the top market share. Nobody else has even 37%. I said, "No, I'm not talking about that. I'm saying there is a available potential between 37 and 100. So is that your goal at any point in time?" "Oh, no, that's very hard." "No, but you said you're the technology leader. You're the number one. You're very good in that. Why don't you get the 100%? So obviously, sales manager, 20 years older to me, the conversation had to be closed there. But then when the next budget was drawn up, the segment market share for that segment was increased from 37% to 48%. Target. Okay? And of course, he was cursing me for a few days, but in the end, they achieved it as well. They even went up to 62%. So it's all in the mind. What is the best market share you can get? It's all in the mind. You can work towards the 100. You won't get the 100, but you will get as close to the 100 that you can get. Maybe the last idea that I want to expand is disruptors. Your new competition, your unknown competition. I know that some of the engineering industries rarely see a totally new competitor, but they also keep coming up. It's not like consumer products, industrial products. It's a harder game. There's a lot more investments required, technology effort required, but they all keep coming up. I'll give you an example of these two. Spire is a venture capital funded company in the US. You will hear about it in the next few years because they're going to be one of the big players of data. And how do they play the data? They own a lot of data satellites. And they can dissect any kind of data in any different way you want. It's a data company mainly for B2B. You don't have to collect your data. It's like subscribing to they will go beyond the Gartners of the world and Frost and Sullivans of the world, because anything that is satellite based and collectible. For instance, they publish reports of sea life migration. Okay, if you are in the fishing industry, fisheries industry, equipment, or food industry, you would like to know where things are moving and where are they going from where to where. This is subsea data through satellites. Okay, it's a B2B business. They probably are still focused on US market. They'll come to some of the other markets. The other company is Rocket Lab. They're famous, very famous prognosis is that one day they will sell small rockets for $5 million, which any company can buy and use. I don't think anybody is still imagining $5 million rockets. That's what they're trying to do. They're very heavily funded as well. So, of course, it's not for individuals, hopefully not, but enterprises can tap into that technology at some point in time. So, in B2B as well, there's always a disruptor. There's always a new competitor. There's always somebody who's doing differently. There's always somebody who's using a different tactic, different method. Are you watching? No. Most salespeople would say, hey, I think there was a new guy who came and presented, but I don't think he's going to do well. What's your first reaction to a new competitor? What's your first reaction? Anybody? Won't do well, right? It's very difficult. I have the upper hand, I have the position. Oh, I've built it over 20 years. How is somebody new going to come and take my position? And has it happened or not? Yes. In many industries, it's happened. Elon Musk has changed rocket launch science and made it a lot more commercially different. He's going to change. He's still trying, but he's going to finally reach where he wants to reach. Nobody would have given him a chance that he can beat NASA. So, in all these processes, you move closer and closer to your customers. You develop a little more trust. You develop some kind of give and take at some point in time. But the eventual goal is to reach there. You're more or less on the same boat or on the same scale as it shows here. There's a automotive company in the US. I am not able to recall the name right now, but it's in the book. So they they had a long-term relationship with their customers for like 10, 15 years. And when both of them were looking to build new factories, they built it next to each other. It's a supplier and a customer building a factory next to each other. That's not the end of the story. They had no wall in between. That's also not the end of the story. They had a common reception. Okay? So you can walk in as a visitor. If it's company A, you're directed to company A. If it's the other company, you're directed to the other company. So they became so close to each other that they were virtually physical in the same physical place. And, companies like Boeing, I'm sure Mr. Srikant's company and some of his other sister companies do this a lot. Boeing has dedicated operations with Japan Airlines, who's one of their largest customers, who's always been one of their largest customers. So you could reach that level of closeness. Goes back to the graph that I showed, that your current customer is 7 or 10 times as profitable. And therefore, why would you not be in this position? Why would you be in an adversarial position, double guessing all the time, not having sufficient trust between each other, not sharing fully the information? That's the sort of essence of the book that I've tried to drive. I didn't complete 50 examples, but I've highlighted some of the key ones which are slightly different from conventional thinking. I would recommend anyone who's looking at account management as an important tool for your future growth to think differently about account management, to think differently about your kind of account managers that you have, to think differently about what are some of the ideas that you will take to your customers in the future. Your customer will be actually pleasantly surprised, many of them. Are you the same supplier? Are you coming and telling me more information? Are you the same supplier that you are saying that this new technology is entirely developed for you? So find in every industry there are key levers which help you to go close to your customer. I don't know if it's a cost, if it is technology, if it is the innovation of their products, if it is taking some joint risks. The last example I'll give before I wrap up is we were talking to one of the very, 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 very well-known, reputed FMCG companies in India and the rest of the world. And they were launching a new product because they had to compete with their customer, with their key customer, also a very reputed company. And then when it came to choosing a fragrance, which is an important part of any new product, because that's the kind of thing which people take to first, even before they buy the product. They smell the product. So we had some testing done and everything was fine. It was accepted. True to the customers everywhere in all parts of the world, they said, but your price I cannot afford. It's very high. After having chosen the product. Okay. So we said, what do you want? Oh no, we want it this much less. Okay. So if we have to consider, what would you say? No, this is our price, walk away. Okay, that's one strategy. We said, okay, if we have to consider anything close to that, what would you give in return? What can I get from you? They said, maybe 5 years we won't dislodge you from this business. Okay? It won't be open to competition. Now, it's a new product, so you don't know 5 years how much you're going to get from it, right? Maybe it doesn't do as well, so 5 years of little things is not going to add up much. So we said, yeah, what else can you give? So we went on and on in this line of discussion. And at the end, for the first time, we had this reverse price proposal. The customer said, give me my price now. Okay? If the product does well, and we had some metrics on what doing well means, I will pay you more. Mr. Srikanth was sharing with me before this talk that most customers have a price reduction pre-arrangement, right? You have a business, at the end of 1 year you give 2% off, at the end of year 2 you give 5% off, at the end of year 3 you give your shirt off, whatever. So, they have their means to get it out from you. We had the reverse arrangement. And true enough, it happened. I mean, of course, it's a very large multinational ethical company, so they kept their word. We sold at below marginal cost for a few months, I think, or maybe a year. And then we started to ramp it up. And in the end, we realized our profitability. And the customer grew, the brand grew. It's mutually sharing the fortunes. Now, does every customer give you this opportunity? Maybe not. It all depends on what relationship have you developed with them. How close is your relationship? When have you helped them? Have you helped them in their troubled times? That's when they will remember you. Or do you hide? When they are in trouble, do you hide? Or do you come forward and say, I'm here. What can I do for you? That's the sort of long-term success story. I may have to end here. Thank you very much. And if there are time.
The story about the 500 rupees invoice.
I'm sorry?
About the 500 rupees invoice.
Oh, yeah. So in the end, the story was that the sales team was told that we don't want those kind of businesses by the CEO. We don't want you to sell 500 rupees business. Vijayalakshmi is smiling. She knows what I'm talking about. So some criteria was laid out saying, okay, this is the customer profile we want. These are our target customers. These are our target priority segments. This is the market share we want. And the 37%, when it went to 45 or 46, the company grew by 10 crores. Okay? How many 500 rupee invoices you need to grow 10 crores? There's many zeros in it, right? So that was the lesson for the sales team to completely change their mindset and say, where we are doing well, where we have the upper hand, where we have a strong technology, where we think customers are happy with us, can we do more? And not every sale counts. Maybe I'm giving you some wrong advice. Some of you may be thinking every sale counts, right? That's not my advice in the book. Okay? Some sales count, some don't. Thank you.
Hi, sir. Thank you for the really wonderful talk. It was really insightful. I'm also alumnus of IIM Ahmedabad, so pleasure to connect with you. I lead a team of account managers with a company called Loyalty Rewards, and there have been cases where we deal with customer organizations. There is probably not just one decision maker. There is probably a CXO or a VP marketing. There is of course one single decision maker, but there are a different level of many hierarchy of executives below. So when it comes to nuanced account management, could you throw light on the different ways of dealing with, say, for example, there is one single decision maker and there are different champions who would probably go around selling your product within the organization themselves at different levels, not just at the top level. So how do you think these concepts that you've highlighted play out at different levels within the organization themselves?
Thank you. Very good question. One simple answer. Read the book. Now, beyond that, this is a very standard feature in B2B, that you have multiple decision makers, multiple players. Some of them are not really decision makers, but they come in and go out. They have some opinions to give. One thing that account managers must do is you map out how the customer decision-making process is. Many times, people are still figuring it out. They go to person A, and then they figure out that actually A doesn't do anything. A's boss is the key person. Okay, I'm not saying go directly to the boss. You have to work with the whole team. You have to work with everybody who's involved in the process. But it's also horses for the courses. When you meet a junior executive, his demands are A, B, C, D. The CEO's demands may not be A, B, C, D. The CEO's needs are slightly different. What happens in typical sales and account management situations is that we have a one-size-fits-all kind of a pitch, okay? Whether it's somebody who's joined the company yesterday or whether it's a CEO, we have the same deck to talk about. But everybody's need is different. How do you get the need? So besides understanding the process of decision making, you need to be able to find out what is this guy's need. I'm meeting a guy today. What is his need? I once was dealing with again, same big multinational company where we used to, can you hear me? Yeah. Where we used to deal with technical marketing, commercial, finance sometimes, factory people, and a whole host of people and so on. I've always assumed that the marketing wants the best product that can sell their brand better, right? I mean, nobody can question that. And when we went and talked to the technical guys, they said, I don't care. I don't care if your fragrance is going to help the product sell more. What's my worry? I don't want any product returns. Okay. So everybody has a different set of worries or needs, if you want to call it, at every level. What is it that person wants? What is his wish list? Can you meet that wish list? Is his wish list part of your overall product delivery that you have? Is that making sense for you? Yes. And account managers need to be trained in that. They would come and tell you, I've convinced A, but B is refusing. Do you hear that? Often? Yep. That means account manager has to do more work.
Professor Bala, you said about transactional mindset and, something we were talking about transactional mindset.
Yeah.
Ultimately, it counts numbers matters in terms of revenue or sales or whatever it is. Do you advise to have a separate team to build more relationship, a little bit of allocation of resource for relationship building separate and transaction? Because if you mix both, some people will say, we'll take it for granted. Sales team particularly for that matter. So can you elaborate on that?
I think it's a very practically important question. I do realize that you all have targets, and at the end of the month, somebody is looking at your numbers and you need to deliver. And you don't want 10 salesmen who come and say, I'm enjoying great relationship with customers and there's no invoice, right? At the end of the day, I would think in account management particularly, the same person should be able to do both, okay? But there may be periods, interim periods, where you might say, okay, I want a few people to chase some short-term sales opportunities, okay? And I want another team who would go and build these long-term enduring partnerships and relationships, okay? The only problem with that is this set of people will stay like that and that set of people will stay like that. They'll never acquire the cross ability to do both. So you can do it for a period of time, maybe a very short period of time. Also, I think at the end of the day, CEOs should also be mindful of the fact that do you want today's sales or do you want today's sales and tomorrow's sales? if you ask in this way, everybody will say, I want today's and tomorrow's sales, right? But then, therefore, they have to align the resources for that. This is all resource alignment issue. It also probably is related to the talent issue, that you might say, oh, I don't get these people who are able to build long-term relationships. I only get the people who can talk today and get an order tomorrow. I only get those people. It's an issue. So account management needs a lot of time, a lot of training, process, organizational support, culture. It's also a culture. In your company is, at the end of the day, we just flew yesterday from somewhere to Chennai. And as the flight was still taking off, I think, or it was taxiing, there was a guy behind us who was on the phone. I gathered he's a sales head of something, okay? He was shouting at some of his supervisors and said, I've been waiting for 10 minutes, I haven't got the target on WhatsApp. Okay? If that is the culture of the company, it's a bit hard. Account management won't thrive in that company. Okay? I'm not saying targets are not important. I also worked in those kind of companies. At the end of my corporate career, I worked in a company which was in the pre-IPO state, which means we all had targets to finish in about 48 months, even less. Okay, 36 months. Clear targets. EBITDA had to go up from 10% to 22% in 3 years. Had to go up. Now, it doesn't mean we cannot focus on the account management, because your customer wants it from you. Your customer will like your company if you are able to give the account management holistic solution versus another competitor who is only giving them the sales solution. It's a hard choice sometimes, but my recommendation would not be to split the two sides, but to somehow keep it integrated and train everybody. I don't run any training company, so don't worry about it.
One more question and then offline.
Sure. Anyone?
Professor Bala, you've been talking about a lot of storytelling. I'd like to, it's not a comment, I'd like to tell a story, which is a real life story dating back to about 35, 36 years. A real story that happened right here. There were two young friends, both from IMA. And they were young professionals having graduated from the institute just with about 1-2 years experience. And these friends, they wanted to share their knowledge on marketing and management with the smaller companies that couldn't afford IIM MBAs that time. Okay. And these two friends, they put up a small ad in the Hindu, in the classified section, offering their services to any of these smaller companies, SMEs. I mean, a couple of ads were put. Unluckily, there was no response. One of the persons is Professor Bala. I am very glad that he has continued his mission of, spreading the marketing concepts fairly wide. And this has happened through his book. I am his partner of those days. Thank you.
So the story is not, you may not get a lot of wisdom from IMA people. 36 years ago, that's what we thought. I hope you have changed that impression.
Thank you for that very absorbing talk, Professor Bala. You took us through, the various aspects of B2B in terms of what's changing and what are the problems. And then you talked about the new account manager and what's likely to be the DNA of such a person going forward. And what I liked most was you made it in the kind of a story, so you're able to easily understand and relate to the concepts. And thank you once again, and thank you for the family for being here, and have a good evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Srikanth. May I request Srikanth to please present a memento on behalf of MMA. Mr. Bala, do us the honor of accepting it.